Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tom Quigley. I'm the founder, creator, and the president of No Thanks Needed. My story goes way back. I grew up in Everett, Mass, just north of Boston. And like a lot of kids in the city, you just do things to always stay one step ahead of the next thing. And while I was growing up and everything, I had great parents, but I always just wanted to take a different path. I got into drinking really bad, and I had a bad drinking problem, and I got into drugs and all that, and I got into a lot of trouble. Since I was a small child, though, I always wanted to go into the Marine Corps, and I had gotten into a real lot of trouble right after I had graduated high school, and the Marine Corps was my option that I was given. When I got into the Marine Corps, I thought a lot of things would change, and I found myself getting worse. My drinking had gotten worse. I was overseas where the rules overseas weren't the same as the rules here in America. But then one day in the Marine Corps, I just realized that I really did have a bad drinking problem and a bad drug problem, so I volunteered for rehab. It was right before the Gulf War in 1991, and I went into rehab, and I came out of rehab, and I was shipped right off to Saudi Arabia for that war. When I got out of the Marine Corps, there was a lot of different things. I really didn't have any skills to do anything. I grew up cooking. I always learned how to cook, and all my jobs were related to that. And from the Marine Corps, I worked with explosives. So all I really knew how to do was shoot a weapon and blow things up. I had seen an ambulance come by one day, and a childhood friend of mine was driving the ambulance, and I said, man, I'd like to try that one day. So I went on to EMT school, and the third day on the job there, I watched a man named John Hines save this lady's life. He was a paramedic, and I said, that's the next step. I'd like to be a paramedic. And I thought back to all the years when I was drinking and doing bad things and running with the bad crowd. I didn't care about anybody else back then but myself. And here I was, just out of the Marine Corps, clean and sober, and I wanted to make a difference. So I waited a couple years as an EMT in Massachusetts. You had to be an EMT for a few years before you were allowed into medic school. Became a paramedic, and it took on a whole new life. I saw that, helping people was so much better than hurting people. During my time as a paramedic, you get really deep into the medical aspect of this and that and everything. And I remembered back to when I was 16 years old. There was a Maury Povich show. And on that show, there was a little girl on that show. And this little girl amazed me. She looked so different from any other child that I had ever seen, and this and that. And I found out way back when that little girl had progeria. And in 1986, 87, nobody really knew what progeria was. And that stuck with me my whole life. As a paramedic, I would always ask questions about it to different things, and people really didn't know anything. I went on, and I had a deputy. At the time, he was either my captain or a deputy at the time. We had tried to come up with ways to have the firefighters deal with losing children in a house fire. And so he said, hey, let's go over to the Shriners Hospital. Now, in Boston, the Shriners Hospital dealt mainly with children who've been affected by fires and burn injuries. So we started going in there once a month and just working with the kids and this and that. And it was supposed to be like a 6-month thing. And I realized that first day in that hospital, just seeing those children and seeing the good that we could do in these kids' lives just took on a whole new meaning for me. His little program, he was running out of time, and guys were falling off. They weren't volunteering anymore. So I decided that I was going to just do it. And I was going to start taking people and asking people from the outside, not just firefighters, to join me to go in and help these children. And what we were doing was we would be bringing in different arts and crafts and little puzzles and stuff for the children who had burn injuries on their hands or fingers, so they'd have to put together things. And it was a type of physical therapy for these kids to, physical therapy through play. The kids with the burned legs, we had Wii games, and we'd play the running games and stuff like that. And it grew tremendously, where I now had to start something. I needed to start an organization because we were walking around this hospital and I had civilians wearing fire department t-shirts just to try to get us in. So I decided I was going to start my charity, No Thanks Needed. And it took me forever. I mean, filling out the form after printing out form, packet after packet. And it was a 32-page packet for the IRS, and I would fill it out and I would send it in with my money, and a few weeks later I would get it back with all red X's. I did this wrong, this wrong, this wrong. And finally, on my 4th attempt at filling out the packet wrong, I got a call from a lady who worked with the IRS. And she said, listen to me. She goes, print out another copy of this. You and I are going to go over this step by step. And this lady helped me on the phone one night. It was 2 o'clock in the morning when I finally finished the packet. A month later, I got certified as a 501c3 in October of 2012. So since January 2011 till then, we were just running like a shadow corporation, you know, just going in this and that. As we got bigger, I needed to start raising funds. And now it's coming up with ideas, you know. People get tired of people always asking for money and asking for donations. So now, as somebody running this organization, I had to come up with clever ideas to raise money. So we started holding an annual comedy night. And from that comedy night, I was making about $20,000 just that one night, and that would carry me throughout. I remember the first little boy that I had met, his name was Adrian. He lived in Rhode Island, and he had a birthday party. And the mom had a bunch of pictures from the birthday party on there, and I was on Facebook checking out all the pictures, and him and I, we got very close. I got very close with the mom. And in the corner of her Facebook page, I saw a little girl. Her name was Adalia Rose. And I said, that's the little girl that I saw in 1986. So I clicked on her picture. And it turned out that this little girl at the time was 6 years old. So I'm like, it couldn't be her. I said, but it looks like her. So I started clicking until I found the Progeria Research Foundation. Called up the 800 number and found out that it was 20 minutes up the road out of Boston. And I was sitting in the firehouse, and my best friend at the time was the vice president of our charity, and I called up and I said, listen, tomorrow we're going to come up and we'd like to help. And I don't know what we can do for you, but I want to be involved with these children. So the next morning we got out of the station, we drove up north, and we had a meeting. And at the time they were bringing children from around the world to Boston for a clinical drug trial. So basically, the families would come to Boston, they'd take a cab to where they were staying, and then they would have to find their way back and forth to the hospital. So I said, hey, listen, I says, my people are going to pick them up at the airport. My people are going to take them to where they're staying just to make sure that they're safe. And during the week, if they need anything, my people will go in, we'll take them out, we'll take them to dinner, and whatever they needed. And then you start experiencing different families and different cultures from around the world, and a lot of these families had never been to America. So I started finding people in Boston that knew about or spoke the language of the people coming to Boston. And it was amazing. I found a professor at Wellesley College in Boston from the same village as a little boy from Tanzania. And a few weeks later, that little boy from Tanzania flew into Boston, and me and this professor drove over there and we met them. And this professor took care of this family for the whole weekend when they first came in. And it just shows me that there are a lot of people that were willing to try this and do this. So we started getting people from Brazil and Belgium and all these other countries and languages that I had no idea about. So we started looking for translators, and I had a whole stable of translators. And this went on for a few years, and then like the house where these children were staying, it was called the Devon Nicole House or the Yawkey Inn, and there were both houses in Boston. One was an old Victorian house turned into basically a bed and breakfast for children, where they would have a room. The family would share a room. There was a common kitchen and common restrooms that they would all share, but they all had a bedroom to sleep in, and there were kitchens. And I had noticed at an earlier drop-off that there were some college students, if they were cooking dinner, for making desserts and cupcakes. So I said, hey, this is the next thing we're going to do. 4 times a month on Tuesday nights, we're going to come into here and we're going to buy food and we're going to cook for whatever families were here. The one house that Devin Nicole held 19 families. So you figure 19 times 3, you could have upwards of 50 people in there. And you would go in and you would sit down and you would cook dinner for these people and you would break bread with them and you would get to know them. And it was just amazing, just the things that you would learn, and you gave them the opportunity to stop being patients for a little while and to start just living. It got to the point where we were doing make-a-wishes and the kids were coming. They were emailing me months out in advance saying, hey, when we get to Boston, we'd love to meet you and we'd love to do this, this, and this. And it ended up being a full-time job. Now on the fire department, I work 7 days a month. So I was capable of doing this whenever. And those 7 days where I was working, I had people on the standby that could back me up. The nurse who was in charge of the clinical trial for the progeria married a surgeon who was doing an experimental surgery on children that had esophageal atresia. And she said to me, hey, our families could use a hand. Our stuff isn't covered by insurance, so the families need a way to save money. Can you come, can you meet with our families and try to help? So we had started that, airport rides, rides to the store to get groceries, whatever they needed, and if they stayed at the Devin Nicole or the Yawkey, they were welcome to eat whatever food we were cooking anyways. Once a month I would drop off $400 to $500 worth of canned goods, groceries and stuff for them to eat on nights that nobody else was there cooking for them. And it just started just evolving, where we started working with congenital heart defect children, and then I found a Camp Casco up in Massachusetts. They run a camp every summer for children that have cancer and children who are survivors of cancer. We just gave them a bunch of stuff. Everything, seemed like my life was just revolving around this. And I thought back to how I was as a teenager, where it was me, 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 me. And now as an adult, as the president of this organization, it was always about somebody else. And somebody else is always having a worse day than you. So you know what? You get up every morning and you're just happy that you're breathing. And you try to make one person smile every day. You try not to hurt one person, and at night you can go to bed a very happy man. In August of 2016, I was in the firehouse and we were getting ready to go to a fire, and I had a heart attack and a stroke. And I don't remember anything except I woke up into the hospital a few hours later, and I had suffered a stroke and had a heart attack. It required heart surgery to fix, and the fire department ended up retiring me. And at 46 years old, it was very hard to realize, to come to terms with the fact that my job, everything that I was doing, was over. A girl brought me to Greenville. I had met her 6 years ago through my charity. Her daughter has esophageal atresia. And 3 years ago, when I had my heart attack, she came to Boston, to help me. For a while, I spent 2 weeks here, 2 weeks there. And her and I, our friendship just really started developing in 2016, and it was great. It was, I was still able to keep my home base in Boston, but also explore life with her. But down here in Greenville, I got a new life, and I had a new woman that we were starting to just have a great time together. And I realized that I could run this charity from anywhere, and it'll give me another opportunity to go meet some new people. She has a couple of kids, and we developed and we started a really great family down here in Greenville. Now, she's a teacher though. So in my charity, I can run from a laptop. It's basically sending money, airline tickets, train tickets, and stuff to families around the world. So I needed something to do while I was in Greenville. So I looked around and I had found a church in Little Washington that I was helping. And again, I was bringing groceries over there and canned goods to help them with their mission. And one day I was in the antique store over on Dickinson Ave, and I had mentioned to the guy what I was looking for. He said, there's a soup kitchen right around the corner.
Yep.
So I drove around the corner, and there it was, the Joy Soup Kitchen. And there was a phone number on the wall. And the next day I called them. And I said to them, I said, hey, listen, my name is Tom. This is who I am, and I'd really like to come over and volunteer. Next day I went over there. You know, I was fully expecting to empty trash barrels and wipe tables and sweep and mop the floor and all that stuff. And it was really a cool environment to be in. And there was just a bunch of older women there, and there was one older gentleman. And the people would come in and they would get their lunch, and they would talk through the window, and I saw a lot of friendships through that window, and how these people that were coming in really needed the food, and they really needed that place to go. And I said, this is something that I would really like to get further involved with. So at the end of the day, I looked at Vicky. I said, I'd like to come back tomorrow. And she said, yeah, we'll see. That's what they all say. So the next morning I showed up, and that was last October. And since then, I've been there 5 days a week, 2 nights a week. And they found out I used to be a chef and a baker, so they're using that to their full advantage, where I'll come in and there'll be stuff there, and we'll just start throwing together all different dinners and lunches for people. Every day I would go out, and after I was done cooking, right before everybody started eating, they would say grace, they would get their meal, and I would go out to that dining room and I would say good morning to everybody. And the past 10 months now, I've developed friendships with these people that come here. Now, there are a lot of people that don't need it. They come here just because. But there are a lot of people that do need it. And it's these people that keep you getting out of bed in the morning. And just last month, I decided, when my girlfriend was a teacher, that I wanted to try to give back a little bit more to the children. In Boston, I did a lot of work with children. Down here, I'm cooking at the soup kitchen, and some children did come in, but I wanted to give back. So I started a backpack drive a couple months ago. I ended up raising $2,200. And with that $2,200, we bought 100 backpacks. We took a school list. We got every item on that list, and we put it into these bags. We went above and beyond those items. 100 children got a backpack, a water bottle, all the pens and paper and rulers and crayons and stuff that they needed. And I saw that this was just another thing to do. I was working with a pantry up in Boston for a while, and that pantry has helped me down here a few times. So coming up in October, I'm flying home. I'm renting a truck, getting the rest of my furniture down here where I just bought a house in Greenville. But half that truck's going to be empty. So I'm going to go to my pantry friend, Irene Cadillo, up at the Grace Food Pantry in Everett, Mass. And I'm going to fill the rest of that truck with canned goods and food. And I'm going to drive that truck 828 miles back down here to Greenville. And after I unload my furniture out of that truck, we're going to take that food and I'm going to make boxes and bags. And I'm going to pick a day, and I'm going to bless people down here with some food. And it's just one more way of helping people, giving people a hand up. And that's what people need today. They don't need handouts. You know, too many people stand in the line waiting on a handout. People need a hand up. And I think that if you're willing to try and get up every day and make one person smile, there's so many things that you can do. And if you want to help, you can call me. You can get involved with me. You can get involved with the Joy Soup Kitchen. You can get involved with NC Packs for Patriots over in Aden. That's an organization that sends troop boxes overseas to troops. And every once in a while, I'll go over there and I'll work for that lady Barbara over there. And she pays me in Girl Scout cookies. Hundreds of boxes of Girl Scout cookies. And then after I work for her, I'll take those Girl Scout cookies back over to the Joy Soup Kitchen. And for a few weeks, people will get Girl Scout cookies for dessert. And it's just a bunch of people getting together and just helping everything out. And that's what we need. We just need people to start reaching out. Every day you see people on Facebook, oh, the world is terrible, and this is happening, and this is happening. And all they do is they complain to a computer. You want to help people? You want your chance to make a difference and move a mountain? Call me. I'll give you something to do. So as I said earlier, it's very hard raising money and to continue doing the missions that we are doing. So I ask a lot of people, if you want to get involved, if you want to help, and you can't be here physically or personally, you can always go to www.nothanksneeded.org. On the donation page there, we take cash donations, we take checks, we take money orders. I also do have merchandise that you can buy that will help fund different things that we are doing. That is on my merchandise page on the website. You can send checks to No Thanks Needed to my address here in Winterville, North Carolina.